Hello and welcome again to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures, the podcast where two friends watch movies and inflict them upon each other. My name is Ben, and with me as always is...
Jim.
Or Jimception. Because he somehow incepted me to watch this movie.
I did. It's one of the nice things about this project that we're embarking on is that I can make you watch things that I want you to watch, you know? So and look, I love Inception, always have, since it first hit our cinema screens way back in 2010. And I am really curious and thrilled to embark on this conversation because I really want to see what you made of it after what I knew had been some separation for you, and particularly with me being essentially a super fan of this film. It was I wanted to see how you took it. But look, before we do that, should I do a summary of the film?
Go for it.
All right. So Inception from 2010 is directed by Christopher Nolan and written by him as well. It's a complex sci-fi thriller that revolves around the idea of shared dreaming and manipulation of the subconscious mind. The film follows Dom Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a skilled extractor, something that the film has created, which is a person who steals valuable information from people's dreams. Haunted by the death of his wife Mal and estranged from his young children, Cobb is offered a chance to have his criminal record erased, but in exchange he must perform Inception, the act of planting an idea in someone's mind rather than extracting one. The target of his mission is Robert Fisher, who is heir to a business empire. Cobb and his team, comprised of Arthur, Eames, Ariadne, and Yusuf, enter multiple dream layers, with each level having different rules and dangers to the one above it. As they delve deeper, the lines between reality and dreams blur, especially for Cobb, whose subconscious is constantly invaded by his deceased wife Mal's projections. The film explores themes like guilt, loss, and the nature of reality, particularly through Cobb's emotional struggle to let go of Mal. The movie concludes ambiguously, leaving the audience questioning whether or not Cobb is still dreaming or has finally returned to reality.
All right, I'm going to keep you hanging a bit longer based on my thoughts. I'm going to run through the facts really quickly. Released in... Oh, did I forget to write a release date? 2010. Directed by Christopher Nolan of Memento, The Dark Knight, and Oppenheimer fame. He didn't have a bad movie, really, to throw in there as a joke.
You couldn't do your thing, could you?
Yeah, he hasn't been prolific enough. Screenplay by said Christopher Nolan. Starring, as credited in Wikipedia, Leonardo DiCaprio, Ken Watanabe, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Marion Cotillard, Elliot Page, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Tom Berenger, and Michael Caine.
I believe you'll find it's pronounced Cillian Murphy.
I don't care. 160 million budget and 839 million. I mean, I should probably learn how to say it, considering you'll probably make me watch every Nolan film, and he's in most of them. So, look, we kind of hinted at it last week. I'm not like a crazy Nolan fan. I love Memento, my favorite movie of his. I don't dislike this movie at all. I think it's a good movie. I've never been as hyped about it as yourself, Jim, and most of our friendship group, and maybe even most of the world. I think I have a disease, and I don't have a name for it, but the more hype a group of people is about a movie, the less hype I get about it for some reason. It's like a real weird hipsterishness in me that I'm really not proud of. But it's a good movie. It is visually stunning. Like, even now, like, you'd think that some of this doesn't hold up. It is a little rubberiness sometimes, but such a cool concept. And, you know, Nolan's always full of cool concepts, and I actually don't think he pulls some of them off, but this one he does. So, you know what? Thanks for letting me watch it.
I don't know. It's not the same. Like, I was like, yes, go on. No, like, that's all you got. I mean, look, I think this movie's incredible. Like, and the thing is, I was sort of, I was a fan of this movie since the first time I saw it. Like, and I saw it opening weekend. So before any of the, is it good? Is it bad? Is it whatever? Like, no one knew at that point. So it was pre-hype, if you like.
Yeah.
And I saw it 4 times at the cinema.
Oof.
On its first week being released on, I guess, what you call home video, Blu-ray, digital, DVD, right? I watched it 6 times in that single week. So, already kind of, I'm 10 viewings in to this movie, and then since that time, fast forward another, 14 years, I don't even want to speculate on how often I've watched this movie, but recently, with my life being what it has been, I probably haven't watched it for 18 months.
Yeah.
Which is, when you look at what I've described about this movie, that's actually quite a long time for me, and for this film. So I actually really liked watching it again with that separation of even just 18 months, because it allowed me to remember some things, rediscover some things, sort of, get back into that world of the film. So like I said, I love this film. I think it's Christopher Nolan's strongest movie, in my opinion. It combines a lot of the things that he tends to deal with in many of his movies, and it really puts them all together. So it's this high concept idea, which is this idea of dream sharing in this case. He puts it together with his film influences, which are film noir, and also in this case, the genre of a heist movie, as well as innovative, big scale action sequences that heavily rely on practical effects rather than computer generated imagery wherever possible. And obviously, it's incredibly slickly produced, which is also a hallmark of Christopher Nolan movies. And of course, the movie is also simultaneously incredibly clever and also very emotionally strong with the central character, with Leonardo DiCaprio's character. So, and that's a tightrope that, Nolan often tries to walk, but again, in this film, I think it really comes off in a very, very strong kind of way. So yeah, I think the movie's excellent. I don't think it's perfect. Interestingly, like I've seen it so much that, like, there are some things about it that, if you want to get into the nitty gritty and into the weeds, you can. And there's some stuff that doesn't necessarily perhaps hang together from a plot perspective. But the movie's actually so complex that you almost feel bad pointing at any potential plot hole that you might see, because you're like, come on, give them a break. The thing is so dense. It's so carefully, meticulously crafted. And ultimately, at the end of the day, any minor kind of plot hole that you might find doesn't actually matter, because the emotional crux of the movie is strong enough, and the real central guiding theme of the film, and the overall underlying premise works so well that it really allows you to move past any minor blips you might sort of have with it.
So here's my discussion on the points you brought up. Again, visually stunning. Like you put this up against any other director's work, any other film, and it's a competitor in something that looks amazing. The action set pieces, the effects, the worlds of the dreams themselves are all really cool. And my favorite part of these movies, I'm a lore guy. I like the lore behind movies and their story and their fiction. I like to think, whoa, someone created this technology. This obviously is done by other people in the world. I'd actually love to see this world fleshed out. I find that very fascinating. You spoke multiple times about the emotional crux of the film. And that is Leonardo DiCaprio's character of Cobb, and his quest to get back to his children, to get back stateside, and to kind of reunite what family he has left. I find that character so overwhelmingly selfish, it's phenomenal. And that's probably what turns me off him a little bit, right? Like, yes, he's desperate, and yes, he is really wanting to get back to his kids, but like he everything in this movie is because of something he did. Everything that goes wrong, everything that goes right, everything that happened before the movie, he's put himself in a world of hurt because of his arrogance and selfishness, and it continues throughout the film as a character. Leo plays it really well, as Leo plays everything really well, but I just find it very frustrating. And
Yeah,
I
it's
find it hard to connect to that character because of it. I'm just like, this guy's a jerk. He's put everyone in danger. They could all end up in limbo, all because he didn't give information, kept information from them, and wanted to get in there because he wanted to do it. Like,
Yeah, it's tricky. Like I get that, but again, I feel like the charisma of the actor punches through that, which is actually why you cast Leo in that role, you know, to actually do that heavy lifting.
oh, it
So
would have been 100% worse if anyone else had done it. Like, it would have
yeah,
been
so
unbearable if anyone else had done it.
and the other thing is, I would also sort of say, and look, we may just straight up, you know, fundamentally kind of disagree on some of this. Like, I agree that, you know, at the start of the film, and particularly from what you learn throughout the events of the film, like that character at the beginning of the film is absolutely in a world of pain of his own devising. Like,
Yeah.
no question. Like, he did all of that to himself, you know?
Yeah.
But from the sort of, you know, after the opening mission, if you like, which is functionally you know, a tutorial on how the world
Welcome.
works. You know, it's a video game tutorial level in the best possible way on how this technology works and how it all works. But after that point in time, you know, his motivation is then incredibly simple, which is he needs to get back to his kids, you know, and I don't really see that as selfish. Like the phone call he has with them, you know, is really like he's desperate to be there for them, you know, and at the moment he can't be, and therefore every action he takes from that point onwards, you know, basically he gets away with for me because it's like completely motivated in that sense, you know. And again, he's not he does hide things, he does deceive the rest of his team, but again, he doesn't feel good about that. Like, it's not like he's pleased that that is something he's having to do. He just doesn't feel clever enough to do it any other way, which again, I feel makes him a sympathetic character. So
we will disagree, and we have to, because to be fair, we actually don't know enough about what happens at the end of this film, as you mentioned, right? Like, did he get back there or did he not? Because the children, as presented in the film, are pretty young and okay. Like, they're not like in danger. They're not suffering, other than obviously they don't have their parents, which is awful. But like, they're looked after. It's not like he has to get back to them, otherwise something awful befalls them.
but
Like,
it's fatherhood, bro. Like he's got
I'm not a
to
father.
like
I can't relate to that.
he's
I
gotta-
understand the fundamental concept. Emotionally,
Yeah.
I can't relate to it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just
So
like, he almost kills like 7 people who are his friends,
yeah.
but because he needs to get back now, but does anyway. That's
But again, like that's,
yeah.
but I would sort of say that's unintended. That's why he goes ballistic when they get to the warehouse and Arthur's like, sorry, I didn't realize he had subconscious security here. And then Cobb just loses it because he's like, this was not supposed to be a risk that we are supposed to be taking right now. Like, you know, so that's kind of like, and at that point, you know, it's sort of like, again, it's bad. It's a bad situation, like all
it's
around.
fun to watch, but yeah, bad
exactly.
situation.
Yeah, bad
the other
situation.
thing is, because of, I think, the amount of effort that is poured into the character of Cobb as well, some of the other characters are a bit two-dimensional.
Yeah,
which is,
but again, that actually leads to some of the real fun of the film because, in fact, every other character is very, you could even argue, one-dimensional. They have their thing that they do, which again plays into the idea of, is any of it even real at all? You know, the only character who actually has a main driving emotional force is Cobb, so that actually then is some of the stacked evidence to suggest that everybody else is clearly serving his emotional purpose, and we're given no details on their backstories or their characters, you know, at all, really. We're given their functions, but we're not given their actual emotional backstories, which again causes the audience to question, are they even real, or are they actually figments of his imagination or his dreamscape? Which again, I like that sort of tension. You know, I think in other movies I would find it somewhat simplistic. The other thing is, by choosing the genre of a heist movie, you're able to have those characters be substantially thinner, and it's actually just a hallmark of the genre, you know,
Yeah,
as
100%.
opposed to perhaps a flaw of the film. So, but look, you mentioned the end of the movie,
Yeah.
and obviously I've seen this film so many times. Would you like my take on whether or not the end is real or not? Because there's actually substantial evidence
Do you
both
want me to give
ways.
my simple answer first?
Sure.
I think the end's real.
Yeah.
The reason I think the end is real is the presentation of the children. So the children throughout the film are shown always from the back, always with as little detail as possible, always with a little bit of fog, right? Like he's deliberately trying not to remember the front of them, like to keep that memory separate. I don't know if that's the way I interpret it. At the end, he obviously spins the thing. He finally walks outside, and you see much more detail of the children. You see much more things. That could just be his acceptance of the dream at that point as well. But I took it to mean that it is real. But yeah, that was my read of
Yeah.
it. What is your read
It's
or answer?
actually, it's not simple, you know, as with anything in this movie, but the filmmakers have done a few things to actually deliberately keep it ambiguous.
Yeah.
The first thing that they do is, every time the children are presented in basically before the end of the film, they are wearing the same costumes.
Mm-hmm.
The girl is wearing a pink dress, and the boy is wearing a checkered shirt, you know, and blue shorts. At the end of the movie, she's still wearing a pink dress, but she also has a slightly different costume on, paired with that, like with a
Yep.
white t-shirt as well. So it's a different costume for the first time. Both of the kids' shoes are different in the final scene of the film, even though he's wearing the same check shirt. So you've seen consistent,
Yeah.
and then at the very end, it's actually different. Their costuming is similar, but ever so slightly different to every other presentation that we've seen of them. However, it is implied in the movie that he has been gone for some time. So this is then the counter argument. So basically what I just set up was, well, it's real then. Okay. This
Yeah.
is the point of difference, right? And you think, cool, yeah, it's the point of difference. That I guess the end is real, except that it's implied that he's been gone for some time, and the children are functionally the exact same age and
Yeah.
look that they are in all of the dream sequences, including his memories of Mal playing with them on the beach, you know? So the idea that they haven't aged or grown in that time is actually then evidence to suggest that it is perhaps still the world of the dream, you know? I think ultimately, you know, look, and Nolan and his wife, producer Emma Thomas, have both said the point of the end sequence is that it doesn't matter.
Yep.
You know, the point is that Cobb has decided that this is his reality, and therefore he is going to commit to that now. You know, whether or not it's actually real or not. I though think that the costuming elements are probably the strongest giveaways there, because it's consistent versus inconsistent, and I would suggest that the ending of the film is real as
Because
well.
the other thing they set up throughout the film is obviously the idea of totems, right? Like only you know your totem, and they murky the waters even further by his totem kind of being corrupted, right?
Yes.
Like it throughout the film, he loses track, or someone else touches it, whatever it is, right?
Well, the problem is, like, you know,
Oh, it's Mal's totem.
it's not
It's
his
not
totem.
his.
So,
Yeah.
so the idea that he can even use that reliably is fundamentally flawed, in and of itself, because the way they set up that particular sci-fi trope, which is, it's like a magic system. You and I have readers of fantasy fiction as well, and good science fiction is very similar to good fantasy in that you set up a system of rules, that how your technology operates or how your world works. And in this case, yes, they've said that the totems must be unique to the person and only you can know the unique aspects of your totem. Now, if his totem was actually originally his wife's, then nothing works, right? It's not a reliable symbol for him, and not a reliable way for him to judge whether he is or isn't in the dream. But there's also other things that he repeatedly does, which is he builds worlds based on memories, which you're also not supposed to do because it makes you lose track of whether or not you're in a dream or not. So he does several things throughout the course of the film, which, are basically established as things you shouldn't do if you're trying to keep your reality in check. So
you spoke about a good sci-fi world, and I actually think this is a good sci-fi world, or at least is the foundation of one. As I said, like the technology, the heist nature of it, the kind of magical sci-fi-esque operation of it, the specialized nature of everybody within the environment, like people who are good at forging can pretend to be people in dreams, and the chemists have different formulas that allow kind of different qualities within dreams. Like, it has a lot of good building blocks for a fantastic sci-fi world. And as I said, between that and the visuals, that's why I enjoy this movie. It allows me to think, what if? I love a movie that makes me think, what if? And this movie deliberately gives you that. It gives you all those moments of, oh, what if they did this? What if they did that? It lets you write your own fiction in your head. Like, it lets you kind of expand the world as you see fit, if that's something you'd like to do. My other question is, because I didn't look this up deliberately, because I wanted to ask you, because you are the expert of this film. Tom Hardy in this film is brilliant, in my opinion. Of the extra characters, or the side characters in this film, he's my favorite by far. It's kind of like that cool swagger with the kind of like quick quips, the way he treats Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, and that banter is really cool. What had he done before this? Like, what was his big thing?
Yeah, so he was definitely rising at the time of Inception. So he'd done a couple of smaller dramas, I believe. He'd done his boxing drama at this stage,
and he'd done like Bronson.
Yeah, he'd done Layer Cake, you know, back in like 2003, 2004. So like, but this was basically his sort of big springboard, if you like, into that sort of big league, you know, and obviously he did Nolan movies back to back then, because he got this and then he went straight to Bane, and that was like solidifying then as like Hollywood leading man.
Well, him and JGL did the back to back, like.
Yeah, well, JGL was a bit more established, you know, than Tom Hardy at this stage, you know. But again, like, and I think, look, Arthur is hands down my favorite character in this movie. Like, you know, and you're probably like, just like, yes, Jim.
He dresses so cool. Like, he's so suave. He's so by the book. He's a nerd.
Yeah. So easily my favorite character in this movie. So and I think he does a great job. Like, and really as well, when we look at inventive action sequences, like, it is just impossible to talk about Inception and not talk about the ridiculous cool factor of the van spinning down the embankment with the characters in it sort of, you know, then losing that gravity. And then you look at the dream level beneath that and you have, you know, Arthur doing the hallway fight in the spinning hallway. And I'm just like, oh, that is action cinema at its finest. You know, when we actually look at that sort of combination of a mechanic that would only work in this particular world that they've created, and then having an amazing action sequence on top of that. And they do it twice, you know, because they do it once with the spinning van, and then they do it again when the van goes off the bridge, and then they lose all gravity. In the level underneath. And I'm just like, bravo. Like, that will, for me, go down in the the hallways of action cinema, you know, as something that is just outstanding, you know.
The geography of like the edits in this film are actually pretty impressive. Like when they're juggling the three levels and they're cutting between them and the action, that should be disorientating, but it's really not. Like they hold their place in the timelines pretty well. They hold their place in the action pretty well. They stop at the right start. They keep going at the right point. Like it's actually really, really impressive filmmaking as far as editing goes in that situation, because that could become a murky mess that becomes unreadable to the viewer. Too much information, trying to follow too many plot lines at the same time, and seeing them all connect to each other. And it's really, really cool. Like, as I
It's
said,
also
like, yeah,
very much supported by the cinematography, like,
yeah,
and the idea that each of those dream layers has a very different and very easily recognizable look, which means when you're cutting between the three of them, you instantly know where you are. Like, you know, the lower level, not the lowest, but the lower level, the third level down of the hospital is basically white. Everything's white because
yep,
it's that, you know, exteriors, it's the mountain landscapes, so we instantly know where we are. The hotel is warm. It's the sort of, you know, amber glow of the lights in the hotel and the warm fixtures, and then we contrast that with the gray overcast rain of, you know, the top dream level. And so it just allows you to do that cutting between, and it helps fill in the blanks for the audience of where they are at any given moment, you know, which again, super clever, you know. So and of course then by the time you introduce the limbo level at the fourth layer down, you are so familiar with the other three that you can bear to introduce this fourth level, which is, you know, very different even in and of itself. So
I also wanted to point out the character of Ariadne. Two things. I remembered not liking the character for some reason. I don't know why. Like, you know, before I watch these films, I've seen them before, I actually kind of sit and I think, I'm like, what do I remember? What do I do? And for some reason, I remember not liking the character. I do like the character. I think it's a good character. And then I also had that weird epiphany moment of, oh, I realize where they got her name from.
yeah.
Like, very clever guys. Theseus and the Minotaur, Ariadne, well done.
It's interesting. I actually, you know, looking at that idea that, you know, the Ariadne character and coming from the myth, involving literally the maze, you know, from Greek mythology, like you're talking about, I'm surprised you didn't make that connection earlier, but B, I actually...
They don't say her name much in the movie.
Well, they say it a bit, I don't know, but
yeah.
I get that's one area of the film where I almost kind of bump because it's so
deliberate. Like,
it's very deliberate. And again, if you sort of say, if you take the opinion that the whole thing's in Cobb's head, it comes off a lot smoother, you know, to have a character literally called Ariadne who designs mazes, you know. So, but the other thing, I don't know if you would call it a problem, because the film needs this, but that Ariadne character is just an audience surrogate, functionally. 100%. Like, the character exists to explain the world to us, you know, whereas every other character understands the world already and therefore does not need it explained to them. So, and it's also like, it's kind of merciless in the sense that, like, the Ariadne character is either serving the story and explaining how the world works, or you know, the character exists to basically
call out shenanigans
from Cobb and be a bouncing board, you know, for his, you know, psyche, you know. So it's kind of like, it's a necessary character to have in the film, but it is a tricky one as well, because there's not a lot there. It's the Harry Potter of the movie that's constantly asking, why is that the way it is? And how do we do it this way? Like, you know, so, but again, not really a criticism, and a well done version of that audience surrogate. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, if you got to have one, may as well do it this way. Like, you know.
All right. Question. Sorry, I've just been ruminating on your, is it real? Is it not real? If it's not real, is it not real for the whole movie?
Yeah, like,
It has to be, right?
yeah, because there's too many things that, would have to happen sort of perfectly. Like,
Yeah.
the idea that he would basically just be completely lost and in a fractured dream state, the entire time.
So if
So
it's not real the whole time, the creation of the projection of Ariadne is his attempt to stop himself.
yes, so and also like
I'm switching. It's not real. That's way better.
well, the character actually, again, like I say, the Ariadne character actually comes off a lot smoother if you go,
Yeah.
this character exists as someone for me to talk to actually work out what's going on in my
Yeah.
brain. Do you know what I mean? Like and that is actually pretty cool in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like, much as the optimist in me wants to be like, oh, the whole thing's totally real. And that's the fun, optimistic ending of, hey, we did it. Also, in terms of mechanics of the world and how things work and, dream logic, the idea that it might not be real is kind of the more fun of the two outcomes.
Yeah, as I said, I've switched. I now want it not to be real. I think that's more interesting.
I want to talk about one thing. Like I think I've been pretty clear in how much I absolutely adore this film, which I do. But again, having seen it so many times, and look, I'm going to totally nerd out. Shooting script, anybody?
Ugh.
Right here. Like, shooting script, appendices, right? When I say I like the movie, I really like the movie. But at the same time, I want to pitch something which is like, either I'm really stupid, do you know what I mean, in having seen it so many times, and look, it's the internet, Ben. So if I'm stupid, then unfortunately, like, it's out
So am
there
I.
for the whole world to see now because of what I'm about to say. But in the opening sequence of the film, which, as I said before, functionally behaves like a training level and a tutorial for the audience on how the dream worlds work, they explain this very important notion of a kick, okay, which is done in this way. So, we have two dream levels in that opening sequence, and Cobb is on the lower dream level, and his body on the dream level above in what is the apartment gets tipped, okay, into a bathtub. And this is called the kick, right? And that feeling of falling causes him to wake up from the dream level below and come into his body back in the apartment level. And that is something that does not behave that way in what is functionally the finale of the film, which is an incredibly important moment. That idea of you get tipped on the level above, and in the level below you wake up, if you like, to the level above. It doesn't act, that mechanic that they explain and then they reinforce later in the film when they're explaining what it was, doesn't actually behave that way in the rest of the film. So did this strike you when you watched the movie?
It did. Probably not as prophetically as you, because you've seen it so much. What I just assumed was the case was that the different sedative they were using changed the mechanics of it.
Which
Also,
you could argue, except that they actually take great pains to say that the way that the sedative works, does not impact the mechanics of the kick. They actually state that several times.
As soon as they do the level within a level within a level thing, the kicks in the dreams shouldn't matter. All that should matter is the kick from the real world. And they've just added this level of complexity that then makes it almost impossible for them to follow. So, for example, when the car crashes off and then JGL forgets or doesn't hit the explosions, which means they don't wake up from the third level, it's almost like a level of complexity that's not needed in the film, because it actually isn't needed for them to add tension, because they still have to complete what they have to do. All they would have to have done is gone, hey man, the sedative has a timer, the plane trip has a timer, we have to do this at a certain speed, and there's a much less complicated wrinkle than missing kicks, in my opinion. And as I said, like, it does throw its own logic out the window as far as that goes. But again, that may lend itself to it's all a dream
Yeah, so
because the
it's
rules aren't consistent.
look, I think it actually does help to add tension to the end of the film because it gives the characters on the upper dream levels more to do
Yep.
when they're not directly involved with the action at the lowest dream level of limbo, But again, that idea that, okay, if that's how a kick works, if it means that on the dream level above, you experience a feeling of falling and then you snap from the level below into that level above, well, then the awesome rotating hallway sequence shouldn't exist
No.
because guess what? When they actually flip that van, roll it down the side of the hill,
Woken them all up.
that's we just woke up. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
From the level below to the level above. So and even if it doesn't wake up all of the people who are then already under again going to the level
Yeah.
below, it should at least wake up the dreamer who is left on that level, which in that case would be Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he should at least. So look, but again, this is the thoughts of someone who has seen this film over 30, like that's so conservative. I've seen it way more than 30 times, Ben. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so, and obviously it gets to a level of minutia, which is sort of like, what are you even doing anymore? Like, is it useful to actually obsess over this kind of thing? Not really. Do you know what I mean? Like, and look, it's one of those things where it's like, you even get the feeling like if Christopher Nolan was here miraculously somehow,
like, hey man, what are you doing?
And he'd just be like, just stop. And then I'm sure he'd also point to 3 or 4 things where he's like, and also just trust me, like it works, right? You missed X, Y, Z, at this other point of the film.
So you talking about watching it so much has actually solidified a thought in my head about possibly why I find these movies frustrating. Watching a Nolan film, watching an Aronofsky film, watching films of their ilk, to my brain, is a bit of work.
Yeah.
Like it's an effort. It's an enjoyable effort, but I'm putting energy into watching that film. It's not a film you can just go on the ride for. Maybe that's why I don't repeat them like you do. You have more stamina for that sort of stuff than I do. Your brain wants to pick it apart. Your brain wants to see every moment, understand every moment, see every moment of brilliance. I want to see the story. I want to see it executed really cool. And then I'm more than happy to walk away from most films. Unless they're super easy to rewatch, like a dumb comedy or like a really simple sci-fi.
And I think
that's it for me.
And that's because you didn't connect to Cobb as a protagonist. It means that you're not able to have that experience. Whereas, like, I will say the first time I ever saw Inception, had no idea what I was walking into, because obviously it was all shrouded in secrecy as well. Like, we had a couple of trailers, but they really didn't give anything away. I certainly would say I had that experience. I connected to the protagonist of Cobb, and I was pleased to have embarked on his emotional journey. I didn't fully grasp all of the bits and bobs of the way the world necessarily worked on that first viewing, but I walked away satisfied because I'd engaged with that protagonist. So that experience that you're wanting, because you didn't engage with the protagonist, you couldn't have, and then you're left with the complexities of the film, which of course it's honestly, it's a combination of both. It's because I connected to the protagonist that I'm able to watch the film so many times, but then yes, the puzzle box nature of it certainly keeps me coming back. And then if you add on top of that my love of cinema, and I can be like, oh, what are all the heist tropes? What are all the film noir tropes? Where are they all? What are those character types? Like, let's talk about why does that incredibly, complex sequence of cross-cutting even work in the finale? Oh, let's analyze the lighting palettes, as we go from here to here to here. Let's look at how we think they did the hallway sequence on a technical level. Like, there's so much here for me there's so many different parts of, whether it be script construction, and I'm buying the script book because I'm like, I want to see like which cuts were written into the script and which cuts were determined in situ and all that kind of stuff. And I'm able to sort of look at it from so many different angles. So, and that is the answer to the question of why have you seen it so many times? I'm like, there's so many different ways for me to engage with and analyze and enjoy this movie, But again, if you're there for that first reason of protagonist, emotional arc, resolution, and you didn't get it, then none of the other things are really going to come.
And as I said, fundamentally, I do get it. Like, it's in the script. It's on the screen. As I said, the other stuff annoys me more than his journey does. But I want to thank you for two things. Thank you for making me watch this film again. It was an enjoyable experience. It definitely wasn't a bad experience. It's a good movie. It's just, I'm never going to feel as good about it as you do. Ever. And you know what? That's what makes us interesting. The second thing is, you've solidified an idea in my head that I've had to begin with. And if we can ever get ourselves organized, I would love to do mini episodes with you called Jim Explains, where you're like, hey, here's a good example of color palettes in film. Or, hey, here's how these angles work, or this shooting, or this editing. We just do like a hyper fixation on a specific topic, and we just let you talk, because I think there's about 40 billion episodes right there, just like little 10-minute shots, and I'd listen to every second of them.
Well, thank you. Yes, no, I'd love to do that. So, but look, thanks for coming on the journey. Thanks for getting into Inception with me. I loved rewatching it because, like I said, it had been 18 months, and also one of the reasons that, look, a little behind the scenes stuff, like it actually took us, a couple of extra days to record this one, was because I wanted to have a really authentic viewing experience. There's a few movies where and Inception is one of them, where I really want to have the best sound, the darkest room, an extended time to concentrate on what's going on. And even just in doing that, I picked up extra things that I had not picked up even in all of those times before. Like, I'll give you a tiny example. This time, I noticed in that opening scene where they're actually talking to Saito and they're in what I guess you'd call the Japanese palace, dream level. That dream level, because in that part of the movie, they're in a dream within a dream, but they're also not under sedation, means that the lower dream level is very unstable, that Japanese palace dream level. Yeah. And before you even realize any of that and see any hints that the dream level might be unstable, in the sound mix, in the as they're just having that dialogue sequence and they're eating dinner, there are tiny, tiny rumbles. You hear it twice, right? And they're so small as to be indiscernible or perhaps a mistake in the mix. Do you know what I mean? The characters don't react to it. They're so tiny. There's no camera shake or anything like that. They're just tiny rumbles, and it happens twice. And then you look to the next scene, and then some of the architecture, it starts to fall away, and that's where you start to notice it. But I'm like, they were foreshadowing that like 3 minutes earlier in a way that even me, who's seen this movie so many times, never picked up on before. And I got that this time. So now look, we are getting pretty much to the area of, I've seen this film so many times that we're literally picking up 2 seconds of sound mix. That's new for me. I'm almost the bottom of the barrel for what's new now. Do you know what I mean? But that just points to the fact that there's so much in it.
You just needed Inception 2 Electric Boogaloo to come out just to fill that hole.
Honestly, if there was a sequel to this, it may break my heart because I can't see it being what this is for me. Do you know what I mean?
It can't be novel again. It can't be.
All the things that this movie is for me, it's reached a level of elevated, on a pedestal, if you like, kind of status that a sequel or a spin-off or a TV show or a video game adaptation would probably just bring the whole house of cards.
Video game adaptation would be awful.
It would just bring the whole house of cards down for me. So I kind of, in a weird way, I just need this to just be it forever. But This is now one of our longest podcasts, mostly due to me talking. So
Hey,
I will let
here's
us
what it
get
is.
to the end of the road here. But
So I feel like we've had a run of Jim films, whether I've picked them or you've picked them.
oh no,
So I'm going into the Ben vault. I'm not
we're
going too
watching
deep.
Clerks. We're watching
No. I don't think we're ready for that together as a
No.
friendship group. And we would definitely just be watching Tusk instead. So
Oh no.
no, we're not watching
Okay.
Tusk. So we're going into the draw. We've actually mentioned this movie a couple of times in reference to being like other films or having aspects of other films. It is a cinema classic. It is genre defining. It has literally set the tone for this type of movie and making a successful version of it since its release in the 70s until this day. We're watching Jaws.
Oh, great. You know,
Yeah.
look, when you said we're going deep into the Ben vault,
No,
I'm like, we're not going that deep. I still really like Jaws.
we're not going to. But this is definitely a movie. There's a couple of movies I've had kind of tumbling around in my head and like they got pushed back because I had ideas for other things. My next three picks, I've already picked.
Nice. Okay.
I know what my next three movie picks are, and they're all movies that I've pushed away or brought in or taken away. So, first one we're watching, Jaws. It is, as I said, genre defining, literally created so many tropes. And I'm really looking forward to watching it and talking about it with you.
Nice. Well, I look forward to it as well. Look, one of the joys I have of being a parent, one of my children has just woken up, so I'm gonna let you tell the good people where to find our magical product on your own today. So, can you do it solo while I
Yes.
go deal with the kiddos?
100%. Life happens. Here we go. If you want to listen to what we do, go to iTunes. You can go to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. You can also go to Spotify with Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. If you want to watch us on YouTube, again, YouTube, Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. And any three of those platforms, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to engage with you. Anyone who wants to talk about movies, we're here to talk about them with you. If you want to follow us on social medias, the only social media we have at this time is our Instagram, and that is Jim_and_Ben. Thank you so much for watching Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. And remember, your homework for next week is Jaws. Have a great day.